Joined by Ashley Orcus, the reigning SEC goalkeeper of the year and the leader between the posts for the Ole Miss soccer team. Ashley, when did you start playing soccer? When did you get out there on the pitch for the first time? And what other positions did you play? And when did you find out that goalkeeping was the right spot for you?
So I actually started playing soccer when I was 3 or 4, in like church league and stuff like that. And I actually wasn't in goal for the first little bit. I was actually a forward, which is funny. And then I figured out that I hated running and like soccer, so I had to figure something out real fast. But it's I've been playing for quite a while.
So you play goalkeeper, you bang bodies, you're making saves. What are your favorite aspects of that position, and like what makes you feel at home there?
Everything. The only thing that I don't like about being a goalkeeper is that it's tough sometimes when you get scored on a lot. But other than that, I love it. I love diving. I love hitting people. I love kicking the ball. I love talking. I love all of it. And my favorite thing about it is that it's not a physical position. It is, but it isn't. It's mostly a mental position because I get to see the entire field. So I get to kind of direct the back line and direct the defensive mids and kind of tell them who to mark, where to go, what to do with the ball, stuff like that. And so for me, it's a very physical position and it's a physical game, but it's also a huge mental kind of chess match in a way. And I really, really love that.
So it sounds like it's similar to like being a quarterback or a catcher on a baseball field where you see everything, you're kind of making the calls and things like that. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but how important is your defenders that are in front of you? How important is it for them to help you in certain games? You said like, you're getting, on goals all the time, but if your defenders are looking out for you, that has to help to a certain extent.
Yes, I am only as successful as the people in front of me. And one of the things I always tell them is the harder that they work and the better they do, the less work that I have to do, which is ultimately better for the team. I want to touch the ball, but I don't want to touch the ball in the game because that's what's best for the team. Right. And we've kind of had a little bit of struggles, a couple of struggles this season, trying to figure out certain like quirks that we have and different weaknesses and stuff like that. But we've started to figure it out. We're starting to grow, and it's a pretty young back line. I think we have Sid Michaelak is our oldest player back there. But the other 3 are either I don't know if they're taking the COVID years and stuff like that, but they're underclassmen still. So it's been a bit of a learning curve this season because there's been some stuff that we've had to fix and had to adjust on the fly kind of. But we're starting to figure it out, and I think it's looking up for us. But the better they play, the less I have to touch the ball, and the better my life is.
Yeah, Ian says that all the time on our broadcast, Ashley, that a clean sheet isn't a goalkeeper stat for the most time, especially when sometimes you keep a 0 up on the scoreboard but only have 1 or 2 saves. It's not like you really faced that many shots, so you need your back line to be that way. I thought, Brandon, the headline of this so far is goalkeeper's least favorite aspect of playing goal is giving up goals. I mean, that's the headline so far.
Yeah, that makes sense.
How do you bounce back in a game though if a goal does go past you? You got to maintain your calmness, and I feel like that's one of your strengths after I've seen you give up an equalizer or whatever it might be, that you have to get right back out there because you're probably going to face another shot in the match.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad that I have all of you guys fooled because it's not fun. It's probably the worst thing. It's the worst feeling ever. I hate it. And it's like, in a sense, it gets kind of embarrassing at times. If I make a really bad mistake that leads to a goal, it gets a little personal. But I've found that with my experience and through that type of stuff, if I immediately start getting frustrated and getting mad and pointing fingers, it's not going to end well. So as soon as it happens, grab the ball out of the back of the net as soon as possible, put it back up to midfield, try and figure out what went wrong, but also look for that throughout the rest of the game. And when we get scored on, I hate it, but I'm not the only one that hates it. So a big part of that is making sure that the people in front of me are all right and are not taking it too hard.
Well, one of the things Coach Mott told us before we called one of your first starts back in 2019 is how much they loved that you were so invested even off the pitch, that goalkeeping was so important to you that sometimes you would be DMing Rob Instagram clips of some professional keepers and saying, how do we do this? How do we work on this? When you see some of that stuff, what are you looking for from those keepers when you're watching those tape, and who are some of the pros that you idolize?
I just look for stuff that I struggle with. One of the things that I try and focus on, and it's a positive and a negative, but I'm very, very hypercritical of myself. And so if I notice a facet of my game that's not up to where I think it should be, I'll try and look for that stuff. And like the Instagram explore page it's my best friend, but it's also the worst time waster ever. But and it was hard for me my first year here before I was playing because I couldn't play. And so that was kind of one of the only things that I had that I was able to do and that I could have done to kind of build that relationship with Rob. But I love Joe Hart. I think he's a really good goalkeeper. I think he's helped England out a lot. And I just like his style. We have very similar set positions, and I appreciate how good he is with his feet too.
Well, you mentioned, Coach Rob or whatever. You're from Vestavia Hills, Alabama, and Ole Miss was not your first school that you decided to attend. You go to Tennessee out of high school, but then you ultimately end up transferring to Ole Miss. 2 questions. Let me start with this. How hard did Ole Miss come after you? Because obviously, I mean, these SEC schools are recruiting a lot of the same players, a lot of the same, and especially on the goalkeeper side, because Ole Miss has had kind of a string of really good goalkeepers. How hard did they come after you? And then ultimately, what made your decision to transfer from Tennessee to Ole Miss?
I actually made my final decision between Ole Miss and Tennessee when I was in high school. And it was one of those situations where I look back on it and I sit there and I think, what was I doing? Because I thought I was making the right decision, but I wasn't. And I really enjoyed my time at Tennessee, and I'm really, really appreciative for the hard work that the coaches put in and the girls and everything like that. And I love Knoxville. I love the city. I love the school, everything like that. But I got on campus. I graduated a semester early. And so I was on campus in January after I had blown my knee out for the second time. They took my crutches away from me and were like, all right, you're walking on your own. And I was hobbling across campus and it was icy and snowy and all that stuff. And I interacted with everything. And I called my mom after the first, I think after the second week there. And I called her, I was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I knew, and I tried to tough it out because I was rehabbing. I had a pretty big injury. So I tried to stick it out. I stayed for the fall, kind of grinded through that. And it just mentally was not a very good place for me to be. It's not where I was meant to be at all. But I stuck it out through the spring because I knew at that point that I wanted to look into my other options, but I didn't have any game film because my redshirt year was burned. I played like 68 minutes or something like that. And I understand. Looking back on it, I understand it. But in the moment, I was like, this is nuts. And so I stuck it out for the spring, played, and then I called. Ole Miss was one of the first schools that reached out to me, and I left Knoxville on a Saturday night, moved out of my dorm, all that stuff. Went back to Birmingham, and then left that Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning. Came up to Oxford, took a visit, committed that afternoon. So I knew when I was at Tennessee, I knew that I was in the wrong spot, and I had a really good idea of where I wanted to be, and it just took me coming back on campus to see it.
Well, Rob knew for sure because Rob is the goalkeeper whisperer. So whenever he asked that, yes. He probably already knew then that what was about to happen.
Yes.
And on that note, a lot of people talk about their love for this Ole Miss coaching staff. They're obviously very close knit. What's it like getting to play for that squad, that group of coaches every single day, and certainly one of the best in the business with Rob?
I wholeheartely believe that Rob is the best collegiate goalkeeper coach ever in the entire United States, wherever. I think he's the best. And he's the reason why I decided to end up coming here. I have never met somebody that can strike a ball as hard as he can. It drives me nuts sometimes, but I have seen exponential growth in myself, not only as a player, but also as a person too. One of the things that I really appreciate about Ole Miss and that I kind of missed previously was that Rob knows me as a person. He knows my dog's name. He knows that I love the Cowboys. He knows all that stuff. And he's about soccer, but it's not just about soccer. He cares about you as a person first and then a player. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we have that a lot of places don't.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the growth that you've experienced under Rob, and you're not the only person who's talked about how great of a coach he is in that space. And it definitely came to fruition last year during the team's NCAA tournament run into the Sweet 16. You had a 7 shootout saves over those 2 wins against number 8 USC and Bowling Green. What was that experience like for that group? It was such a long year, split between the fall and the spring seasons. And, you guys put it all together at the end in the spring and made one of the deepest runs in program history. What was that entire experience like?
It was incredible. And it's something that I am never, ever going to forget. I do feel bad because when we ended up, when we were playing USC after second overtime, everybody on the bench was like, "Come on, Ash, you got this, you got this." And I just look at him, I'm like, "Don't talk to me. Like, just let me lay on the ground. Let me do my breathing exercises." And I remember making that last stop. And the only thing that I wanted to do was run up to those group of girls and the coaching staff and just celebrate. Because it was a rough fall. It was hard for us. And then the spring we came out and we were lights out every single game. And we deserved it and we had earned it. And so it was incredible. That was probably the best experience that I have ever had in my collegiate career.
I'm going to repeat myself because I don't think I explained it well enough. 7 shootout saves and 2 wins over Bowling Green and USC. You were on an island out there. I mean, when it's a penalty kick or a shootout opportunity, Ashley, that's you versus another person. There's a lot of film preparation that I'm sure goes into finding tendencies. I'm not sure how much you get of that at the collegiate level when there's not penalties being taken on a nightly basis. But what's that like? What goes into that? What makes you such a strong stopper on PKs?
It's truthfully a huge mind game. That's all it is. It is about physical ability to an extent, but it's also about picking up on certain cues and doing your research beforehand and trying to read certain people, but also understand their personality. I remember Tara McCowan was the girl that she had a PK in the first overtime period that we played, was able to stop that one. And then she took another one. And I've known her previously through certain club matches and like national team experience and stuff like that. And I just kind of had picked up on enough of her personality to realize she's going to go the same way. She's stubborn enough and competitive enough that she wants to put it in on that same side that she missed. And so it's all about reading people and reading their personalities and reading their body language. And also a good chunk of it is luck, to be completely honest with you. And it's also I had a decent game against USC in the run of play, but my back line and our entire team as a whole saved me a lot. And so it was a lot, and it was a whole team effort to get us there in the first place. And so it was crazy and it was cool and I loved it, but it was really stressful.
Well, that 2020 season led to a lot of accolades: SEC goalkeeper of the year, all SEC, being on the top drawer, best 11 team at the end of the season and into the preseason here for 2021. Whenever your time comes, after all these accolades amount for you here, you're going to be a professional goalkeeper. There's no doubt about that. When you think about the opportunity to continue playing soccer professionally, what does that mean to you?
It means the world. It's, for me, I have personally been through a lot, both mentally and physically, like trying to get to the point where I'm at right now, and blown my knee out twice, all that stuff, been through a bunch of stuff with my head and things like that. And so everything that I've worked for and everything that I've sacrificed since I was so little is going to lead up to that point. And it's cool. It's a lot of pressure, but it's really, really cool. And I love it because it gives me an opportunity to kind of achieve what I've been working towards my entire soccer career since I was 3 or 4 years old. So it would mean literally my entire career in the world to me to be able to do something like that. That's my ultimate goal.
I think one of the unique things too about the growth in soccer in the United States in general is the growth on the women's side with some of these the women's leagues popping up and having success and having, passionate fan bases, and, CC Kaiser right now playing, and, Channing, who was drafted last year and will go on to play. What do you see as far as that, what you envision the growth in the women's game, and especially at the pro level? I mean, like, what are your pro aspirations, and, how have you seen the growth on that side?
So my aspirations, I would love to stay in the United States. I'm very much a homebody. I love my family. I love being close to home. So I would love to stay here, but I also understand that there's not a lot of contracts out there for goalkeepers. So truthfully, I will go anywhere that will give me an opportunity. I just want a chance to play, and I just want a chance to prove myself and just have fun and enjoy it. But I have really kind of picked up on the growth the past like maybe 5 or 6 years. It's been exponential. And so I see us adding more and more and more and more teams as the years go on and as we gain more and more traction.
So when you were younger, you were part of a lot of the national team camps for the United States. What was it like at a young age to see some of the best female players in America and get to kind of watch them and then obviously see their progression? And then you're a part of that. You were at those camps as well, and you kind of, now blazing your trail. What was it like though to see that at a young age?
It truthfully was a really big test to my mental strength. Because the roster for team camps, for youth team camps, changes so often that you could have a lights out camp and not get called in the next time that they have one. So it really kind of forced me to grow up and mature a little bit faster. Because I remember my first they do these like nightly like practices and stuff like that called training centers, I guess. And I remember my first one I did so bad. And I cried on the entire way home to my mom because I was like, they're not going to ever call me back. This is going to be horrible. I hate this. Like, this is so bad. I just embarrassed myself. But and as tough as that night was, and as bad as I feel for my parents now that they had to deal with me, I look back on that now and I attribute part of my mental strength and tenacity and determination to stuff like that. Because I would get into a team camp, and then I wouldn't get called in because I would have to have surgery. And then I'd get back in, didn't do too great, didn't get called in. Went back in, blew my knee out again. So it's like, it really taught me how to realize what I want and commit to it and be willing to sacrifice whatever I have to. But it was also really cool because I see people now that got drafted this past draft, and I'm like, oh, I played with her. We follow each other on Instagram. Yeah, she's verified on Instagram. Yeah, we're friends. And so it's really cool, and it kind of it tightens the community a little bit for soccer in general. Like, we'll play SEC teams, and I know somebody on almost every single team from club, but also from that. So it was cool, and it gave me something to work towards and something to look forward to, and stuff like that. So it was hard, and but I loved it.
I think it speaks to the work ethic side too, because, and you mentioned it, you see so many of these super athletes. And I think a lot of times that the casual fan, the average fan, takes it for granted and says, "Oh, well, it's just another soccer player. It's just another, All-American or whatever, fill in the blank." But you get to be close to someone that is on a different level, and you get to see their work ethic. You get to see their day to day. You get to see what kind of, time and energy and effort they're putting in. And then you go, okay, well, that's why they're that good, is because they're doing all of this. And so I think that, to me, when I was reading some of this about you, it just says, okay, well, you kind of see why she's having success is because she was able to go to these different things that were ultimately helped her be successful, because she got to see it day in and day out. And I think that's the unique thing about those type camps.
Yes, 100%.
You ever let yourself daydream about wearing the red, white, and blue and going between the posts to represent the country? Is that something that you can allow yourself to do?
It depends. It depends on what's going on. If I have something important to do the next day, if I just feel like daydreaming. So one of the ways that I handle that, and that goes back to the whole, like, kind of not really mind game, but mental strength that is needed with stuff like that. I would love to. And that's ultimately something that I feel like I'm capable of doing if I continue on the track that I'm doing and continue to work hard and push myself and stuff like that. I would love to, but very rarely do I let myself daydream, because I know that while I'm here at Ole Miss, this is my sole focus and this is what I have to work on. But I would love it. It's really fun watching their games on TV and being like, yeah, I would love to be out there. I would do a lot of things to be out there right now. That'd be so cool.
Well, let's talk about your game a little bit more. You notoriously have a big leg, and you get brought out to the field more than once a match to, whether it's deliver a free kick or so be it. I'm not sure if it was, and you can help me here, if it was Samford or Alabama or LSU.
Alabama.
Okay. Brandon, a near screamer, upper 90. I don't think it was an attempted shot on goal. I think it was meant to be a pass. But if you sneak one in, what is the goal celebration?
So that actually was a shot. I'm gonna own it. I will own it. I was trying to go for goal. To be completely honest. I know the tendency of certain goalkeepers that we play against, again through the past experiences with soccer, and I know like I can kind of see like their tendencies, and I know what they're about, and I just knew that that was one that I was in the right position, and I figured why not? It was a wet night, figured oh well. But the reason I actually never used to be that good at being a good distributor with the ball at my feet. That was never really one of my strengths. It was something that I always kind of had to work on and was one of my honestly negative qualities about my game. But when I was here at Ole Miss after transferring, since it was SEC to SEC, I had to sit out for a full 365, and I couldn't travel, I couldn't dress, and I couldn't warm up, but I could practice. That's all I could do. And I figured out how to turn the stadium lights on pretty fast when they were out of town. And so I would just go out, and I still do it to this day. I go out at night, turn the lights on, and it's just kind of, it's visualization, but it's also rep after rep after rep of goal kicks, drop kicks, side volleys, but also playing in those type of set pieces. And we have a kickball that I'll go out and kick against. And it was for a really long time, it was all that I could do. And I just tried to throw myself and lose myself in it in a sense. And that, but also in the weight room. I pride myself on my ability to squat and deadlift and all that type of stuff. And that's a really big part of it. And that's part of the reason why I can send the ball that far. But it's one of the cool things that I never thought would actually happen when I was back for my first year, not being able to do anything. But it's really cool to see how that kind of happened from something I did never expect.
I had at the LSU game, I had a client with me and they were sponsoring the game. Shout out Bank of Commerce. But their marketing directors a girl named Lindsay, and she played soccer in high school and all that. And so she was really into the game, and we were having a good time just talking. And you kicked one from your goal, and it landed about 2/3 of the way down into a group of people. And she looks at me and she goes, "Holy moly!" Like, and I said, "What are you talking?" Like, I guess I wasn't paying attention. She's like, "Did you see how far she just kicked that?" And we were laughing it up about it. I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "Dude, they're real athletes." Like, it was just funny.
But I love hearing about how much you're doing in the weight room. You didn't answer my question. What's the goal celebration?
Oh, I didn't even hear that. Sorry.
Are you flipping like Channing? Are we gonna get one of those?
Do you want to bring a stretcher out onto the field? Because if so, then yeah, I'll try and do some somersaults for you. But I don't really know. I'm torn because I know that obviously I would be super, super happy. I actually did score in the NCAA tournament, by the way. I took a free kick from midfield and scored against Bowling Green, but we fouled the goalkeeper, so they called it back.
That is true.
And my celebration, I just threw my hands up in the air. But I love Channing Splits. I love them to death, and she deserves every single one of them. But from my aspect, I know what it would feel like to be the other goalkeeper, and
that's true.
How embarrassing it would be. So it's like somewhere in the middle. I'm not that great at flips, contrary to popular belief. So probably not that. I might whip out a cartwheel or something, but I'd get like really low points for that one.
And along the same lines, I saw the social media post that went out not that long ago. Joking, you had the mic on at practice and you're working the long throw. I'm coming after you, Matt Corral, and I could be the kicker for Ole Miss. Have you ever kicked a football, and with what kind of success?
I can kick a 40-yard field goal. That's the farthest I've been able to kick it. And I actually kicked that when I was in high school. I haven't kicked a field goal since then. So if anybody wants to go out and knock around some field goals, I would love to.
I think the bigger concern isn't the missing or making of the field goals or punting. I think that if they told you, okay, kick off the ball, get off the field, there's no chance that Ashley Orcus is not sprinting full speed to make the tackle.
Oh, I'm too stubborn and I'm too competitive, and I would 100% go for blood in regards to that. I'm not the type of person to step off the field for something like that. I want the tackle.
That's awesome.
Well, we're not going to persuade anybody to try to make that happen because she's got too important of a job for the Ole Miss soccer team. And we're so appreciative of the time today. Ashley, you were great. We look forward to the rest of your success here in the red and blue.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me.